go. Here we go. Good morning, folks. Hope you're all well. Lovely to see the participant numbers climbing steadily as we jump onto this morning's webinar. So I'm Tony Stevenson. I'm sure there's more than one of you on the call that has sat on a webinar with me before. I will be taking you through self-assessment tech strategies for hassle-free filing this morning. If you want to just sling in the chat box where you're dialing in from, where you are, just lovely to see where everybody is everybody's in from. That'd be great. Just give a few seconds while everybody gets kind of settled, gets their cups of tea sorted, and then we'll get cracking. There we go. Good morning, Tony. Good morning, David. Good morning, Paul. Another David. Adam. Phil Hobden. Sunny Eastbourne, of course. Plymouth. Forest of Dean. Lovely. I went to oh, where's the place called? It's dropped out of my head. Went canoeing along the river. It will come back to me. Leicester, Barnet, not far from me there, Barnet. I am in just outside St Albans. Libya. Wow, River Wye. Yeah, that was it, Claire. Good morning, Claire. North Devon, Russell. Brilliant. Right, let's get cracking. So, agenda for this morning. Short bit of housekeeping, me setting the scene, and then the majority of our session this morning is going to be panel discussion with three industry legends that we have got with us this morning. More on that in a little bit. We'll have a little Q&A at the end, and then there'll be the usual sort of 10 minutes of FreeAgent live demo at the end for those of you that would like to stick around and see a little bit more of FreeAgent. One thing I would ask is that occasionally I've just spotted one that's popped up now, is the hand raising function. We can't deal with questions kind of live necessarily on the chat, so if you could avoid using the hand raising function, because it just keeps pinging at me and I can keep seeing it and I feel bad that I can't deal with the question at that time. So there we go. Housekeeping. So today's session will be recorded, so you don't need to worry about that. I'm sure there'll be a few people that join us after the start, and there'll be a few people that have to drop off before the end, but don't worry, you will get the recording sent out to you as part of the follow-up. So if you want to chat, there'll be a couple of opportunities for sort of interaction, and I'll chuck out a few questions to the group. Then do use the chat function. If you've got specific questions that you would like my colleague Louise to answer about FreeAgent or about what we're talking about, please use the Q&A box. So they're next door to each other, the chat one and the Q&A. The problem with the chat boxes is that if you put it in there for questions, they get lost. We might have to go away and do a bit of research just to make sure that you get the right answer. So if you've got specific questions that you'd like someone to answer from FreeAgent, then pop that in the Q&A, and we will we'll summarize them all at the end of the session as well. So we have a polite and respectful policy on these webinars. So I am absolutely sure that we won't have any troubles today, but on odd occasional webinars, we have had people that were unable to observe the polite and respectful policy. I always liken it a bit like being in the cinema. If somebody's shouting and screaming and and disturbing the piece, then it ruins the enjoyment for everybody else. Like, by all means debate, by all means pop stuff in there, but we're all here to learn, we're all here to move forward together. So if you can keep things polite and respectful, that would be much appreciated. So there will be 2 or 3 opportunities for you to say, yes, I'd like somebody from FreeAgent to reach out and contact me through this session. So we'll have some polls and nothing too strenuous there, but yeah, we got those polls, and you have a good opportunity to make sure that you get the chance to interact with us post the demo. And as I said, at the end, we'll do the usual that we do, FreeAgent demo. So there'll be about 10 minutes of just us showing you a quick look and feel. So we've got people on this webinar who are FreeAgent partners and people on this webinar who aren't FreeAgent partners. So anyone is welcome to stick around, but if you use FreeAgent already, then that's probably not for you. It's more for the people that haven't used FreeAgent before, or haven't used it for a while, or would like to just get a bit more of a look and feel of it. Cool. So just to point out, today is a CPD accredited webinar, so you will get an hour or a point of CPD for today's session. You will get an email afterwards in the follow-up, which has got a link in it where you can just jump on and say, yeah, watch the webinar today, and download your certificate. So you don't need to do anything. It will come to you. Contact your account manager or someone from FreeAgent if it doesn't arrive in the next 2 or 3 days. And just a little bit about FreeAgent. So we have a bunch of people on this webinar today who've joined us that haven't used FreeAgent before. So we are just to take a moment or two just to make sure that everybody knows who we are. So we're award-winning accounting software. We are owned by the NatWest Group, and we operate in the micro to small end of the market, right? So that's where we're really, really suitable for those sort of smaller businesses that you might look after. Contractors through up to 10-20 person businesses. That's the real FreeAgent sweet spot. We've got a really good mobile app which has won a bunch of awards, and I guess the important thing to say is that if you have a sort of NatWest, Royal Bank of Scotland, Ulster or Metal Bank account, then you can have the core FreeAgent product for free. That's free forever. It's the full-blown version of FreeAgent. You don't need to there's no sort of bits that are not included within that. So yeah, jump on that. It's brilliant. We're HMRC recognized, MTD compatible. We've got about 170,000 active users within the UK. We won a bunch of awards. We actually won the Friendliest Software of the Year award last year and this year as well at the Luca Awards. So yeah, if you're interested in jumping in to the FreeAgent world, then you are more than welcome to do that. That's weird. Sorry, I seem to have skipped a slide. So time for our first poll. So what we find is that people who jump on the webinars would like to actually follow up with us. So what I am going to do is I'm going to launch the first poll. If you just bear with me 1 second. There we go. It's disappeared off to the side. There we go. So if you would like to find out more, then do so. If you give the opportunity now just to jump on there and indicate your interest, that'd be absolutely great. And we'll make sure that somebody follows up with you after the webinar. We like to do this at the beginning so that everybody gets plenty of opportunity to to interact with us and make sure that we've got all your details and that we can follow up with you after you've said that that's okay for us to do so. So I'll leave this running for about 30 more seconds, and yeah, if everyone could jump on there and just give their answer, that'd be super useful. We're about 60% participation now. I would love one day to get to 100% participation on a poll. Panelists, you're excused because you can't vote on the poll, I don't think so. Cool. Give it another 15 to 20 seconds, and yeah, there we go. Cool. We seem to have settled now. So I will, oh, sorry, wrong button. There we go. In the poll. Perfect. So a bit about myself. We'll just run through the presenters, a few opening slides, and we'll get straight into it. So I am the Senior Digital Enablement Manager here at FreeAgent. My career can be split quite neatly into two parts of around about 9 years. So the first part of my career, I was in practice and in industry. So I picked up my ACA along the way, trained with the Big Four, and was a tax guy for say best part of a decade. Truthfully, I'd always been looking for a way out to utilize my skills better. And I happened across the accounting software industry, worked for Xero for a couple of years, had a year out to go traveling, and then I've been at FreeAgent now for just under, it'll be 6 years next year. So I've done a bunch of different roles at FreeAgent, but my current role is Senior Digital Enablement Manager, which means I do a bunch of this sort of presenting and talking on stages and a whole bunch of other stuff that I get involved with. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves, and we'll start with Russell. So yeah, if you could just give us a brief potted history on yourself, mate, that'd be much appreciated.
No problem. Thanks, Danny. Very similar, to be honest, to your sort of career path. So I'm currently head of UK Digital Accounting Solutions here at Azets. So that's where I work with our software vendors and the business to embed and implement the sort of optimal technology for our service lines, and make sure that the businesses get the most out of those platforms. Previously, very much like yourself, I was in an office. I was in an accounts role. So again, fully qualified accountant. So I've sat on essentially both sides of the fence of doing these job roles. So done the doing and now also enabling the business to do things better.
Brilliant. Absolutely perfect. Thanks ever so much, mate. Katie, I'll throw it over to you. Could you do a brief intro? That'd be great.
It's going to sound a little bit repetitive.
Yeah, it's actually, isn't it? Yeah.
But I worked in practice for 13 years, qualified in a firm in Lincoln in the East Midlands and worked there for my whole accounting career, and then also discovered the software world. Also worked for Xero for a couple of years, although you and I didn't overlap, did we, Tony? I think
we were very, very close. So we worked in the same team doing the same role, give or take. And yeah, I'd left just before Katie started. So
and then so ended up worked for Xero for 3.5 years and now work at Dext, and I look after a team of accounting experts with the same background as myself across all of our regions, who basically support the account management team with making sure that we're doing everything that we can to support our partners in the best way, right through from before they become a partner through to using the product in the best way that we see as well. So yes, that's me.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So from some of you that would be expecting to see Steve today, as he was advertised on most of the copy before we came out. Unfortunately, we all wish Steve well, but he's got COVID, and he emailed me last night to say that he was sounding quite similar to Barry White, and that he didn't think that his vocals would be would hold up to an hour of us chatting. So Steve's not with us today, but I wanted to just give him a shout out because he's such a lovely bloke, and he felt terrible about not being able to be here today. So he also provided some of the insights for the first bit of the session as well. So instead, at the last minute, with a huge thank you from us, Phil Hobden stepped in, and I say the last minute, I mean an hour and a half ago we were chatting about what we were going to talk about on this webinar. So Phil, if you could do us the honor of giving us your intro, that would be much appreciated, mate.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for having me here at last minute. I mean, some of you might have been confused and just thought Steve had gone a bit grey over the last week or so. But my name's Phil Hobden. I'm going to break the trend, actually, and I don't come from practice. I actually come from banking and finance as a background. So I used to work for NatWest Group broadly in a couple of different roles. And then I found the wonderful world of technology through a couple of different software vendors over the years. So I've been working with accountants to implement technology and kind of make their lives easier for about 8 or 9 years now. Currently, and recently, having started just 2 weeks ago, I am head of growth and strategy for Knowit. Knowit is a relatively new fintech in this space, but we work in the credit management area to kind of automate chasing your invoices and making sure that you get paid quicker and faster. So I've been there a couple of weeks, but my role is ultimately to grow the business across the UK and get people more aware of the awesome stuff that we're doing here at Knowit.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, mate. Much appreciated. And again, a big thanks to Phil for stepping in to the final panelist spot this morning at very late notice. And I sort of forget that I'm unusual in that I enjoy being thrown into things at the last minute because it makes me feel less guilty about lack of preparation that I've done. Cool. So just a little bit of setting the scene. So we've had a really successful series of webinars about self-assessment and various different parts to it. So the first one was around sort of focus on the team and, you know, how do we make sure that the team is, you know, geared up for success and supported when inevitably the deadlines loom and there's extra work to be done. That was really successful. My colleague Jem took us through a sort of focused pricing focused webinar in the second installment of the series, which again was really successful, and we had a whole bunch of great feedback from that. And then the final session now is about the tech and about how do we kind of build the tech piece into into the self-assessment process and world so that we can kind of make the most of it. So Steve, who isn't with us today, did some really interesting kind of insight and work into how this stuff was going to sort of fit together, and pulled out some pretty interesting facts on stuff. So despite the fact that obviously we've got a lot of technology available to us, if you study that little graph for a second, you'll see the spikes, and the spikes represent the January workload, right? So as we can see, it takes a pretty similar process, but this is data from HMRC, and this is third-party filing online. So you can see that in January this year, we still had nearly 3 million returns that were delivered in January, and less than 500,000 or just over 500,000 in December. So we're still seeing that end of year crush. And why is that? And and we can get into that today and start to explore some of the some of the reasons as to that is, and some of the solutions that maybe we can look to from a tech angle. This is just a nice little sort of split, as you can see, that gradually over time the third-party filing has risen, but so has then the HMRC filing online as well. So the paper stuff is dropping, but we are also seeing obviously increases in numbers of people filing online. But hopefully we're able to work out how is it that we can make the most of the technology solutions available to us in order to to smooth that work across the year and not perhaps experience this big sort of spike in January. An industry figure well known to us all is a guy called Will Farnell, written a couple of books on this topic, runs a firm called Farnell Clark, and various other bits and pieces within the industry. Very learned chap, and he always quotes this figure of, he reckons we're somewhere around 20% of businesses in the UK are deployed on cloud software and taking advantage of this tech, which still leaves a huge opportunity for us to to make more of that, and help us to leverage the tech that's available. So we're going to dive in with the panel on on the sort of workflow and how this stuff flows through, and how we can make the most of of the technology that's available in order to help to smooth this process out. So panelists, what are the challenges that we see with respect to data collection? So we're going to start at the beginning of this process. Businesses are doing business things and they're creating business transactions, and that creates then some stuff that we need to process as an industry, bookkeepers and accountants alike. Katie, it seems like an obvious one to start with yourself. What are your thoughts on on the data collection side of this self-assessment process, right at the beginning where we start?
Yeah, it's definitely one. I'm just going to give literally a 5-second pitch on what Dext does, just in case anybody's aware. So yeah, the reason that you've asked me that question, I think, is because our flagship product at Dext was previously called Receipt Bank. It's now called Dext Prepare, and it's the ability to collect receipts and invoices, sales invoices, bank statements, and extract them and automatically post them into products like FreeAgent. And I believe we're just about to roll out an even more enhanced experience between Dext and FreeAgent in the next week or two as well, which is really exciting. So that's us, and that's why the questions come to me. But what I would say is we still see huge amounts of data collection happening on an annual basis, and I think that's the reason that we obviously see those huge peaks that you've just shown on that graph. And I think a lot of firms feel like, and this might be correct and it might not be, like clients don't want to change the habits of how they're bringing the records in. And I think up to a certain point that was okay, as we were gently moving towards cloud, and we didn't want to kind of overwhelm clients with too many changes all at once. But I feel like we're a little bit further down that journey now. Accounting firms feel a little bit more comfortable with talking about cloud software and the benefits and how it can help the clients and the practice mutually. And so I think it is a good time to be able to start to have that conversations around maybe if it's currently annual, it becomes quarterly, or maybe if it's currently quarterly, it becomes monthly. And you can use MTD as a bit of a stick if you want to, but actually there's so many other benefits around more regular collection of data. And I think going back to the stats that you were sharing, I don't know if you've also got the stat that actually over 3,200 people submitted their tax return on Christmas Day.
Christmas Day, yeah.
And I think what that really shows us is business owners are, so busy. We know this is not new information, that the only day that they actually get to themselves to spend on their tax records is the one-day holiday that they potentially get every year. And so actually that's a carrot in itself. Let's not spend Christmas Day collecting data and posting it into a system, but actually driving the behavior so that the regularity of the collection is just slightly improved bit by bit.
And have you seen that trend sort of starting to happen in your time at Dext?
Yes, I think so. I think we were definitely moving much closer towards it when MTD was on the horizon, and suddenly we were having much better conversations, because I think as much as all accountants are, you know, the number one advisor for their clients, and I think they're very much respected in that way. But I don't think they want to be too forceful around changing the way they work with their clients. But honestly, I think clients want direction from their accountants. I think they want to be kind of told and guided in the right directions of getting the business in the place that it needs to be compliant. And so we can, as much as we don't know right now any timings around MTD, and I won't just talk about MTD all the time, but as much as we don't know timings, it is a really good, I think, light at the end of the tunnel, if you look at it in a positive way. I know it was met with really like mixed feedback from everyone, but we can see it as a real goal, because actually it's going to force everyone into this much more real-time collection. And we were having much better conversations with partners when that was on the horizon. And just to add, actually, also, we were having much better conversations with HMRC as well. So obviously, because we're one of the approved providers like yourselves for MTD submissions for self-assessment, once the API has been released, etc., etc. We were having kind of very regular conversations, and what HMRC said to us is, believe it, take this with a pinch of salt, believe it if you want to, but what they said to us is it was never about chasing that massive tax gap. I'm sure that was on kind of the plan somewhere.
I find it very hard to believe that it wasn't somewhere down the line, right?
I'm sure it was in there, but what they said to us is what they really wanted was to alleviate the pressure from business owners and accountants in January, in December, because not only is it a huge filing requirement and takes up people's time, and it adds so much stress when you've just constantly putting it off, but also there's absolutely no ability to be able to plan for the amount of tax that is then going to be calculated, because a lot of businesses won't know in advance what the tax bill is going to be, and the later you leave it, the less time you have to actually plan for that payment, and then you have problems with cash flow. But also for accountants as well, they then don't, if they're on kind of annual fees for tax returns, they aren't then able to raise those bills until after they've done the work. Just as the client has got a massive tax bill to pay, they aren't then super prepared to pay for an accountant's fee on top of that as well. I actually overheard a really interesting conversation, or I thought it was interesting anyway, in a cafe a couple of months ago.
We're all accounting nerds here, don't worry, mate.
And I was just listening to a business owner chatting to a friend, and they were saying, you won't believe it. I've just done, my accountant's just done my tax return, and the tax bill was £3,000, and that doesn't even cover the accountant's fee. And I just, like, for you or me, you were like, of course it doesn't cover the accountant's fee. Like, why would it? I just thought that was such a crazy thing to say. But what it did give me was a bit of an insight into a business owner's mind, that they just see this outlay of money as one big payment to the powers that be, whether that's accountants, whether it's HMRC, whether it's, I don't know, a company's house annual filing fee. They almost just lump that all in together as the same thing, even though they're completely separate.
Yeah, I have a friend who he comes to me every now and again and asks me for advice as a sounding board for his relationship with his accountant. And he's the same. He was very much of the opinion that his fee that he pays his accountant, in his mind, is insurance against paying tax. So he's like, if I pay my accountant's £500 a month, I shouldn't have to pay any tax on top of that. He should work out how to stop me from paying tax, because that's what I pay him for, is that. And as I had to explain to him that wasn't how it worked, and that if you earn six figures, you're going to have to pay some tax and VAT, some corporation tax, and this kind of stuff. So yes, very, very familiar tale, I think, and understandable, right? It's a mystery, and that's why the profession is so needed, because this stuff's difficult, right?
Yeah, it feels like a necessary evil for them, doesn't it? And that's why they just lump it all in together. I have to pay this, I have to pay that. But actually, we need to, like, the ability to be able to separate those out, schedule the tax, the cash flow for the tax payment, and then completely separate out the accountant's fee for it might be quite beneficial.
Indeed. I'm going to go to Russell next on this one. I'm keen on your thoughts, mate.
Yeah, I think there's several different hats that we can put on this. So when I'm looking at the challenges, we've got the business owner, the client, the practice perspectives. I think the biggest challenge is there's so many different multiple touch points. that in itself is a challenge. So you've got you know, the business that's trying to get the money and the information for their business. So something like a Dext prepare, absolutely, you know, second plug for you guys, makes perfect sense. But if I'm a tax, just a normal taxpayer with, you know, dividend portfolio, shareholdings, that sort of thing, doesn't really work in that scenario. So the one thing for me that normally stands out is make things easy for your clients to provide you. So a data capture tool is absolutely great, but something like document exchange or a client portal, to get the client in that habit that Katie was talking about, in terms of they get a P60 that gets uploaded straight into the portal, ready for the accountant. It's just changing those behaviors and making those touch points easier. I think makes a really, really big difference. And from my perspective, when I was in practice, is the data quality part. So the second plug for Dext today is the precision element. So my biggest bugbear was client gave me records inevitably quite late. They came in, they were checked, they were inevitably missing something. Then you have to go through that cycle loop of going back to the client, asking for missing information, then providing it to you. Or even worse, you start a job and you realize halfway through that job that the data's either rubbish, you're missing information, it needs reworking. And to triage that, normally when you're, you know, we're in November now, into a January run where you've got a lot of workflow backing up behind you, to get, you know, halfway through a job, put that time and investment to then put that down for 3-4 weeks for a client to fix a load of data or give you information, is huge and really frustrates the accountant. So the easier that you can make it for your client, whichever type of client they are, to provide that information to you in that right behavior, but also make sure that it is complete and of good quality, is the biggest challenge I think that I've seen when I was sat in office.
And with the possible exception of Phil, I'm sure that we have all sat there and had the white dread come over us when we know we've left a job and then we open it and go, oh no, the whole data's not here. And now it's been sat in my inbox festering for, I mean, it's just me, festering for some time, and now I know I've got to go back to them and say that, you know, I asked you for these 19 things and you just sent me a spreadsheet, then that only covered 4 of them. So
yeah, time and time again where you leave some jobs because I know they're good, they've always been good at giving me their information, and then lo and behold, you pick it up at the last minute and you're like,
they weren't good this
year. You did 3 weeks ago, but can I really have these 5 things that you would normally have sent me? And it's just like the embarrassment is beyond.
It's painful, yeah. Phil, any thoughts on this one before we move on? I'm desperate to keep to time today, and the trouble with these things, I just love these conversations, so they just let everyone talk for as long as possible. So, Phil, any thoughts before we move on to the next?
Yeah, slide? Look, I think one of the things that we talk about a lot is the legislation and MTD and how powerful that would have been and is. But there's a danger with legislation, right? And the danger is, and I just look at it, if for those of us that drive, there are speed limits. How many times do we ignore the speed limit? Well, I'm guessing we've all done it at least once or twice, right? So legislation can be there, and yet people can still choose to ignore it or adapt it as it is. For me, actually, it comes down to education, right? And I think this is part of the problem that I genuinely think as an industry, as a group, both on the tech side and on the practice side, we need to be far more kind of front and center, re-educating people and making sure that the why, right? Like, do you want to be doing this on Christmas Day? Absolutely not. Well, in that case, what can we do to help and support you to not do that? And what can we put in place, and where does that education journey start? So I think legislation will go a long way to kind of help around this bit, but actually I think it needs to be balanced with really good education. And anytime you wave the stick, you have to give the carrot and show the benefit. I think ultimately that's what will start to change the data collection. All the tools and technology are great, but you can give people everything, but if they don't see the value in it, the true value to them, and not just the value to the government or to the accountant or to whoever, then actually that needle won't move. And that goes back to Will's statistic, right? There's every piece of technology is in this marketplace now to change the way your practice works and make it 100% digital. There's probably nothing, Russell, you probably tell me slightly different, but I can't think of much that's missing in the grand ecosystem of technology now that doesn't exist. So realistically, every firm should be 100% digital, right? It's a reality of it. But they're not, and I think again that comes to that change in behaviour, which comes to education, And I think that's one of the key points within all of this.
It is, and we'll touch on that, dive into that one a little bit later. So we're going to move on to the next one. If you want to sling in the chat your favorite data collection tools, tips, kind of workflows, successes, then do that. Would be really useful for us to have a peruse through. I'm sure Katie won't mind if there's the odd one that's not Dext. So what challenges do we see with respect to the bookkeeping and best tools to help with this? So obviously we're a bookkeeping tool at FreeAgent, right? We are set up very much to cater to the smaller end of the market. And what I mean by that is that we are incredibly easy to use, right? And our feedback supports that again and again and again, which allows us to operate in a slightly different way to our competitors. But even, you know, we've got a not insignificant number of people on our platform, but not anywhere near full capacity for the UK, and certainly not in our micro space, which leaves us plenty of opportunity to you know, to use these platforms to flow the data through, to work closely with our you know, with our clients, to lean on them for some of the bookkeeping to help to keep things up to date. We talk about the aha moment, right? And I think one of the biggest challenges that we see is how do we get our, what will be your clients as accountants and bookkeepers, you know, our users of FreeAgent, how do we get them to what we call the aha moment, which is where they're sitting there and they suddenly go, aha, I understand why I'm doing this now. So I understand why it is that you need to see the categorization on these transactions, and why it's helpful for me to raise my invoices here, or take pictures or receipts or whatever it might be. We've done a lot of work. We leverage artificial intelligence to help to augment the education process that Phil was just talking about through the use of the software. So we used to, before we had these tools in there that will help to explain things, you know, your clients would sit there and they would log in and they just see what one of our users friendly termed the red wall of death, which was just red transactions, and they didn't know where that was supposed to, what they were supposed to do with that. So helping with this artificial intelligence that explains them, they were able to go, oh, I can see what that goes to advertising and that goes to sales, and then start to fill the gaps in themselves. And we've seen a real trend upwards in, you know, of businesses getting this stuff right, and, you know, and really being able to help the accountant to get that stuff, you know, in place for them. Russell, I'm going to go to you first on this one. Challenges on bookkeeping and best tools to help with this. I mean, FreeAgent, obviously, but
obviously, I think, you know, as with the last discussion, it's very much the biggest challenges there are the behaviors. All of these challenges come down to the people problem fundamentally,
yeah. And
then you've got your processes and the technology that enable those changes. So I think as a profession, we are guilty of training clients to be bad clients. And what I mean by that is all of those behaviors, those traits of accepting the way that we did things last year or subpar information, then absolutely, you know, everybody's been guilty of that. So I think the biggest challenge normally is around the education piece from practice account managers, but also the clients, to make sure that this is enabled and optimized. Phil's point a minute ago, bang on, we need to show them value. For me, it's always the why does it matter to me moment. So when you're sat with a client, you're saying, right, you need to go on to a piece of software to do this. It's going to be great. For me as the client, I'm like, but why do I care? And if I'm filing my tax return on Christmas Day, I'm raising my invoices at the weekends when I should be with the kids, that's my why. So if you can enable that, educate them, empower them to do their bookkeeping well through training, support, and adding that value, ultimately, that's where I see the biggest wins from a client perspective. The alternative ultimately is, you know, option one is take the burden away from them, enable them to be a business owner first and foremost, and do what you are good at and let them do what they're good at, and work together in terms of their bookkeeping. So there's two different approaches that you can obviously take there, but the days where I've sat in front of a client and genuinely been with shoeboxes and gone, if I can put you on this solution, not only can you raise your invoices automatically through the system and get paid really quickly electronically, but you know, your bank statements are here in this box. I don't need that box anymore. And we put that to one side. And then you start breaking down and they start picturing it, how that impacts them. And by the time we got through the end of the session, all of their shoeboxes were gone to one side. And all they then had was like 5 or 6 pieces of paper, which was P60, savings, interest, and all that sort of stuff they need to provide me. I said, I don't need all of that stuff. I only need this going forward. And back to your aha moment, that's a lot of the business owners' aha moment.
Excellent. Yeah, really
In terms
interesting.
of tools, I mean, there's so many out there, but I think everyone on the panel would say that there's kind of 4 that sort of go to the surface, which would be your Zeros, your QuickBooks, your Sage, and your FreeAgent. And I think they all have their place with different client demographics.
Yeah.
And what I would say is, from a FreeAgent perspective, you guys are so good at positioning yourselves in the micro and S of that space that there is no confusion, and you're not trying to use the product in a way that doesn't really fit that client type. And I would say as well, the other challenge is getting the client being a good user of software from the offset. And the other thing that you guys are really good at is that onboarding piece and making sure that the client has been set up to succeed, in that they've got a bank fee, they raise the sales invoice, run through an expense, match an item off. So it's giving them the confidence to be able to use the technology to its fullest going forward.
Couldn't have said it better myself, to be honest, mate. Katie, thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think something I just wanted to highlight is Russell's absolutely right. It's the behaviors, isn't it? And that's sometimes what we really need to challenge the most. And you can you could pay a huge amounts for every tool on the market. You could go to Accountex and buy everything that's on show, but if you don't actually use them and change the behaviors of the people within your firm, yourself, your clients, then actually none of them are really going to bring any value. And I know that sounds obvious, but it's not always about kind of what you choose or how much you spend. But I can remember when I obviously looked after our digital transformation project. So we're going back about 12 years ago when I first picked up Xero, actually, and we moved a whole bunch of clients onto Xero from a previous desktop-based product that was very popular in the UK. I'm sure you can guess which one I'm talking about. And when I then tried to use Xero, I actually, so I had arguably one of the best products on the market, but because I didn't change the behaviors about the way that I was using it, I was seeing very little time saving, like very few benefits. And I was thinking to myself, this should feel better now. This should feel really transformational. And actually it doesn't make me feel any different. And that's because I was typing invoices into the system. And I don't think I had bank fees set up for half of the clients. And as I say, we were fairly early adopters. So this is going back quite a bit of time. And I'm not assuming that anyone else on this call is doing the same thing as that today. But I think what it highlights is that we should be doing regular like workflow reviews of the tools that we've chosen and how we're using them, and to make sure that we're maximizing that from a process point of view. I often speak to people who just kind of jumping back to data capture, and I'm not saying I'm not kind of forcing anyone to use any one product, because this is the same for whichever you choose to use. If you a little bit similar to what we were saying earlier, but if you receive the records, put them on a shelf or in a room, and then 3 or 4 weeks later, when the person who's processing the job picks up the bag of records, then scans it into the system, then tries to do the bank extraction, and then has to sit around for a day or two waiting for all of that information to be extracted, then they think, oh, the tool isn't good enough. It's taking too long, because even 30 seconds per invoice is a lot over 1,000 invoices. And so my challenge is always, don't take the records and put them on the shelf. Get your receptionists trained up on how to use the scanner and upload it into Dext or into whatever product you're using. Tweak the workflow of what happens to those records when they come into the building, because then by the time somebody's actually sat ready to work on the job, everything's been extracted, all of the automations kind of happens, and what the first job that they're doing is not scanning, it's actually beginning work on reconciling the bank or doing the creating the cash book or whatever it is. So whatever tools it is that you have, and I know that we've all probably got app fatigue for us to a certain extent now with just the amount of sheer choice on the market, speak to your account managers within each of the tools that you're using, ask for like regular reviews on kind of the usage and your best approach to using those tools, and just make sure you're getting everything out of them. There's probably hidden features that you don't know are there and will really help.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that you can't you shouldn't just take out one bit of software, put another bit of software in, leave the system exactly the same and expect it to work. Like if they were identical bits of software, then why would you be changing? That wouldn't make any sense, right? So you do need to review the whole system and see the tech as a part of it. And yeah, I completely agree. So in the interests of my promises to everybody that we were going to stick to time, I'm going to slightly rejig what we're going to do, and I'm going to skip over you for this one, Phil, but we're going to you first for the next one. So if you just bear with me a brief moment. So one of the ones was around filing that we were going to talk about, but I'm going to summarize this one into what I kind of think, and then we're going to jump on to the meatier topic of implementing and how do we go about practically getting this stuff into the hands of our users and starting to move them in the right direction, and and see the benefits that we've talked about. So in terms of filing, what I would say is this: is if you are a firm that uses one platform for your bookkeeping, then you might be lucky that you're able to use one tool to make your filing. So FreeAgent has self-assessment filing in it. It'd be remiss of me to mention that we haven't also added the property pages recently. And you can now file sort of landlord stuff through the self-assessment SA 100 and SA 105 pages that we hadn't had previously, which was had been a request of ours for many years, and we've solved that now, so that's great. If you are not in that situation and you are having to use multiple different platforms, then you might want to consider a central platform that integrates with the different platforms that you would like to do. But what I would say is that these platforms should talk to each other. So when you're making that decision around which platform do you want to use to make your tax filings and your accounts filings, company filings, check out the APIs, check out the websites, make sure that you are choosing one that integrates with the different bookkeeping tools that you've got, so you're not adding that layer of, now I've got to download this into a form, reformat a CSV, and like a mapping tool is fine, but we know Excel is fraught with danger and can fall over. So really we want to be looking to plug these bits of kit in. For anyone that's interested in what we were talking about, the tech stacks type of thing and the different levels of that, I would so solidly recommend that you go and have a look at the series that Russell's just done. I've got everybody internally reviewing it. It's all about the different levels of bookkeeping and the add-on tools that you would go through, and it covers all this stuff off. It's really good. And he put that on LinkedIn. If you go to his most recent post, he linked off to all the other posts on there as well. So I very much recommend going and checking that out. But what we're going to dive into now is so these two I'm going to subsume into one, and then we're going to sort of practical considerations of self-assessment filing process in the firm, and how do we tackle process improvements. So what are the challenges that we're actually going to come up with, and I'm going to you, Phil, first, because I know this is a particular passion of yours, and I skipped you on the last one. So
it's all right. So look, for me, we've talked a lot about process. I think there's two areas to this. I think one is consider our customers, and one is consider our practice. So from the customer perspective, one of the things that we all have to realize is that a lot of our clients didn't start business to do their accounts, or didn't start business to do technology. They started business because they're bloody amazing at whatever they do. I relate this back to my dad. My dad was a farmer, and if I'd have they were the literal box of receipts, and to try and get him to implement something like a FreeAgent or a Dext, I mean, it would have literally blown his mind back then. And I don't even think they had internet in their little cabin at the back, right? So there is an element to say that actually, and going to your points earlier, the right tool for the right job, right? FreeAgent sits really well and really concisely in a specific market, and it becomes a very good tool for people of that ilk. So the best thing, but you wouldn't want that same customer trying to use a Sage 50 or that kind of product, right? Because it just doesn't work. So we've got to consider our customers and their capabilities and their industry and what they can do. So to Russell's point earlier, I think it's absolutely key that you work out, actually, is it right for us to take the bulk of that responsibility away from them? So therefore, we can help them with that, rather than trying to change someone or change something that fundamentally is probably never going to get where you're going to get, and it's always going to lead to that frustration. So I think sometimes we need to lead a lot more and kind of pull people along. I think from a practice perspective, the thing I always say around workflows and challenges and time is that, yes, we talk a lot about enhancing the bookkeeping process, the data capture process, and all of that. And all that is absolutely critical to self-assessment and that kind of horrifically busy January period. But for me, it's actually also looking at everything else in your practice, right? If you're only automating 2 or 3 things with the end goal of improving January, guess what? Other stuff's going to come in and other challenges are going to come in and other problems are going to come in that you haven't automated, that you haven't looked at, that you haven't solved. So actually, this goes back to that Will Farnell point. You need to be looking at all of these processes, all of the things across the firm that drop in or could be automated, or could be automated so they don't just drop in. So actually, from a workflow perspective, when it comes to that time of year, you know what to expect. You know how busy you're going to be. There aren't as many unexpected things happening. I think actually that then gets the whole practice ready for that period, rather than doing that and having other bits coming in and other distractions happening and taking away that complete lack of capacity that there already is. So for me, I think like, from a process improvement perspective, actually, it's getting the whole house in order and not just the bits that are relevant for January. I think that's critical when you kind of break down these problems. So I think there's a problem with customers and actually our expectations of taking the farmer. I say farmers, there's some very tech savvy farmers out there these days, but taking that person that isn't tech savvy and may never be that tech savvy, and how can we support them better, and not just lumping everyone into one bucket and expecting everyone to follow your process and your workflow because that's the way you want to work. Well, actually, for some people that might be quite hard.
Yeah, I think when you say tech savvy farmers, do you mean Clarkson?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mate, excellent insights as always. I think you're right. You've got to look at the whole thing. I think I was on a webinar yesterday with Will Rush from Pixie, and we were talking about this idea of a sort of task force, going to your team and finding out, why are we experiencing sort of suboptimal results, involving them in the process. And I'm a big fan of we have a sort of project going internally, and we have a fortnightly tactical where we sort of sit down and bring our our things to the table and kick it around with the group, and it works really, really well. Month is too long, a week is too frequent. 2 weeks sounds great to me. I think we all get tons out of it, and it really helps to keep you accountable to that point of, right, well, we always said we were going to go away and try and solve this. We're not going to solve it all in 1 year, but we are going to, put in place the top 5 things that, we need to move in the right direction. And, and we're going to check in every couple of weeks, and we are going to start this earlier in the year, and we are going to, move these initiatives along, and it not just be let's just have one conversation about it. And then it's like, oh, have you done that thing? No. Have you done, it was no accountability built into in process improvement. So I'm a big fan of that, and I'd recommend it.
And you're absolutely right. And I think the other thing we've got to be careful of, the 2 other things I would say around all of this. Firstly, and I think it goes to your point, make sure you're implementing tech the practice needs.
Yeah.
Right. So I think we've all seen it. You go to Accountex, you walk around, and it's like bless God rest his soul, Dale Winton supermarket suite with technology, right? I have a bit of that, I have a bit of that, I have a bit of that. But actually you end up implementing stuff that maybe improves your life, but doesn't improve everyone. There's an old school 90s reference for anyone that's a bit older on the call. So I think there's absolutely that danger of us implementing stuff that other people don't need, and therefore it becomes a distraction rather than a benefit, right? And I think so we have to be always thoughtful of, does it make our overall boat go faster rather than just my boat go a bit faster? So I think we really have to consider that along that journey as well.
Know what problem you're trying to solve, and don't, tech shouldn't be driving the bus, right? We should be having a problem that we need to solve, and there's a solution for it, and we're well versed on how that might look, not just like, oh, that's great, and then when we actually come to implement it, we realize that it's not what we need. Russell, your thoughts in a potted nutshell on this as much as you can, because I'm almost stuck to time. I'm not far off.
Well, please holding you to time today, so I'll just add on top of what Phil said, because he's absolutely right in terms of what he's described there. For me, there's always 3 things in process improvement: people, process, platform. You need to look at them in that order. Again, you shouldn't let the technology drive the process. What I would say about process improvement is it needs to be cyclical. It needs to be living. It's not a one and done process. And often I see too many people where they look very siloed at those processes, and you try and fit a round peg in a square hole. in the scenario where, you know, one piece of technology or a process doesn't align to the one that precedes or follows it. So you have to have that holistic view, and, you know, those incremental improvements, you know, period by period, like you talk about, Tony, or year on year, they add up to huge efficiency gains in the long term. Just because you know, you don't get to 100% of your poll requests on the first go, doesn't mean you stop, does it? So it's just, you know, for me, it's always about break it down, constantly review it as a living thing, and look to incrementally improve it on top of everything that Phil covered.
And make sure that you communicate really clearly, because people get nervous and a bit scared if they don't know why the change is happening. So
Is it just me that can't hear Katie now, or is it everybody else?
I just did that thing where I moved my head to make sure that it wasn't my internet, right? Yes, I think sadly she's dropped off.
You can't listen to.
She's back.
I
yes.
can still... Okay,
No,
sorry, that must be me.
I was going to start padding about robot hoovers then, but
sorry, I was just going to add it into the chat. I just wanted to add about, like, change management is so important, like really clear communication. So you can't ask everyone everything, but like a quick Google form is quite good sometimes, just to get a bit of a pulse on how people are feeling and where the changes could be made. But as the managing director in the firm that I used to work in used to say, and I loved this phrase, tell them everything they need to know as soon as you possibly can, because when people feel like they're kept in the dark and change is happening around them but not with them, they feel scared and nervous, and you get pushback, and people don't like it. So if you do have like teams, if you like in a medium or larger firm, just tell them everything that you can as soon as you can, to make them feel safe and secure, and to get them their buy-in into the change that you want to see.
Amazing. That is a really nice thought to finish on. I've written down Russell's "it needs to be living." I really like that. I really like what you said as well, Phil, and what you said as well, Katie, but I've written that down because it feels like a good content starter. Right, that is it, folks, in terms of the panel. So there's been a few questions that have come in as we've gone through. They've all been answered, and in the interests of time, I am going to just summarize a couple of them. So yes, you'll get the recording, folks, for anyone that joined late. So there's a few thank yous. There's a couple of bits about receipt capture tools. Dext is the one we are talking to today, and we integrate very heavily with Dext. So yeah, go check them out. And there's a couple of other accreditation questions. So yeah, if you go on the website, there'll be a accreditation on there that you can go and get involved with if you're a free agent partner. So what we're going to do now is I am going to run another poll. So you have another opportunity to say you would like us to get in touch. So I'm going to launch this. While I do the poll, I'm going to say a big thank you to my guests today. So you've been amazing, super insightful. I'm sure we could have gone on for another couple of hours, no problem at all. Thank you very much, Russell. Thank you very much, Katie. And especially big thank you for Phil, who was stepping in at the last moment and serving up his usual insights and knowledge around all this kind of stuff. I thought to myself, it was actually my colleague, Jem, who was like, what about Phil? I said, what a brilliant idea. Phil will definitely be ready to go. And it was. So thank you very much. Brilliant. So yeah, again, folks, if you want to jump on the poll, then you're more than welcome to now. Say yes, you'd like somebody to get in touch with you, then that's great. We're at 53%. We'll run it for another 30 seconds or so. We are now going to jump into the demo of FreeAgent. So the panelists are going to drop off shortly. So if you want to show them some love in the chat, that would be hugely appreciated for them, because their insights, they're giving up their time today to help with the profession moving forward. So if you want to chuck your thanks in there, then that'd be hugely appreciated. And if you hang around, I know Louise has got to drop off for a meeting, so I will do the demo, and you'll get an insight into FreeAgent for those of you that would like to see it for a few minutes. So thanks again to the panelists and to everybody who helps to put these webinars on. All the participants for sticking around right to the end. Our drop-off rate's been very low this time, so we must have been chatting some interesting stuff, right? Brilliant. And thanks again. If you are going to drop off now, then brilliant. If not, I'll stick around and I'll take you through FreeAgent. But thanks ever so much, folks. Much appreciated. Right then, I'm going to end the poll now. There we go. Could somebody just stick in the chat that they can see my FreeAgent screen now? I'd much appreciate that.
Yeah, you can, Tony.
Brilliant. Thanks, Hazel. Thanks, Louise. Louise on the chat and Louise on the panel. Brilliant. Okay, so just going to 5 or 10 minutes, just a quick look through FreeAgent, just to give you some look and feel. So what we are looking at currently is the dashboard. So you'll get this as a partner. If you sign up to FreeAgent, you'll get a dashboard which gives you the opportunity to kind of house all of your clients in one place, so you're able to kind of access them sort of all centrally rather than having to kind of keep going and log in into all the different ones. You'll notice across the top, for anyone that's sort of re-looking at FreeAgent, we now got kind of groups in there as well, so you're able to set up groups within your account managers within your FreeAgent dashboard, so that you can have different client sets that different people can access. A couple of other bits. Of course, it's logged me out. There we go. So we have an alerts tab. There's a couple on here that are really really valuable. So non-VAT registered UK company turnover. So this one tracks the company's turnover, and you can set it to whatever limit you want, and then it will ping when your client hits that level of turnover. And obviously, if they're unVAT registered, then you can go and register them. There's other ones in there about numbers of explained bank transactions. There's one that allows you to see when your bank feeds are going to expire. So obviously you are able to reconsent your client's bank feeds on their behalf without you having to go out to them to do it, which is really helpful. They can do it as well, but that's really super helpful. For those of you who asked about accreditation, so you'll notice in the practice portal here, if you click into partner resources, it will take you through into this page. Bear with me a second. What to do. And then if you click into learning and accreditation, that will take you through to be able to undertake the accreditation. All right, let's jump into a client, just have a quick peruse around the client, and then I'll just take you through a few of the bits and pieces. So we have our little insights here, and then this is the overview screen. So this gives us a nice insight into banking, profit and loss for this particular company. And then I've rearranged mine now, so I have the tax timeline sits here on its own little widget. Tax timeline is a really popular feature within FreeAgent. Just reminds you and your clients as well of the various different deadlines that they've got coming up in their in their business, corporation tax, income tax. It depends on if they're a limited company or what. And then what we're just going to do is a quick look around banking and a couple of the reports, and then we shall call time around about the hour mark. And then so if we come into here, let's go into that west. Actually, I'm going to just it's a different one. So if we go into this one, this will show something slightly different. So notice that here we've got all transactions, and then we've got unexplained, but we've also got for approval. So if I filter to unexplained, you'll notice here that I've got a bunch of transactions that I can start to look at. And you'll notice as well that if I come up to the top and I hit description, it orders them by description. So if I've got networking meeting, I can click the top one. I can go all the way down to the bottom of the networking meeting fees. And if I hold shift and click that, it will fill them all in. And then I can go, right, okay, so these were incoming, so I'm going to put them to sales. I know there should be 20% VAT, and I can explain all 32 of those transactions all in one hit, which is great. There's a lot of kind of bulk tools in there that will help you to process these things. And just wait for a few seconds while it does that. You notice they've all gone green, so they're now all part of the ledger. They're all showing up within the the P&L and the balance sheet. You'll notice here we've got for approval. So I'm sure a couple of you are probably interested in the artificial intelligence that I mentioned earlier in the show. So we have a tool within FreeAgent we call Guess. There are two parts to Guess, but really interesting to spend a few minutes just talking about what Guess does and how it can benefit you. So the first thing that Guess does is over time, it learns your behavior. So you'll notice here, I put LinkedIn premium account and I put that to advertising and promotions. Now, if I do that 3 or 4 times in a row, FreeAgent will go, or Guess will go within FreeAgent that's what Tony does with that. That's what Tony does with LinkedIn Premium accounts. So I'm going to start doing that for him, which is great. It's really helpful. And then over time, if you move it to a different code, it will learn that that's where it should go and sit for the new treatment. What it also does, which is also really clever as well, is our data science guys managed to. Sorry, I've just got a little tickle in my throat. Just bear with me a second. There we go. Yeah, it's better. So what our data science guys did was essentially they built this model that taken all of the data that's ever happened in FreeAgent, put it into essentially a big database, and then sort of looked for trends. So a good example of that would be network rail, right? So greater than 95% of the time, people put network rail to travel. So FreeAgent thinks that's a high enough bar that it's going to be useful for you to do that as well. And we started with this sort of really narrow set of transactions and a really high bar. And then over time, the transaction set has widened and the bar has come down slightly while we continue to test the accuracy of, of the data. And what that's done is it's meant that over the course of the 2 years since this part of the algorithm and the artificial intelligence has been programmed into FreeAgent, day one explanations in FreeAgent have gone from 11% to 65%. So what that means is that when your client, your client's been trading for 6 months, so they realize they need to do bookkeeping, connects up the bank feed, pulls those 6 months of transactions through, on average, 65% of those transactions are explained by FreeAgent before we even start. And then what that serves to do is it helps your clients go, I can see how this works. I can see, that's where I should be putting that. And maybe I got a couple of questions about this, and it helps them to really understand, why we're doing this. Hugely beneficial, really helps with bookkeeping and your clients understanding and getting to that aha moment. And a feature that's been hugely popular and one that we're leading the way in from a bookkeeping tools perspective. And just a quick look at a couple of the reports as well. So there's been a few new ones in there. So we've got usual P&L balance sheet, but there's been some extras in now. So we've now got custom range within the show transactions, which is a relatively new one, which is quite helpful. And one that we had, a couple that we had asked for a long time, was the audit trail. So that allows you to now be able to come in here and search for, so I want to just show for deleted transactions or something, which was perhaps a bit more challenging to do within FreeAgent before that. Really helpful, these sort of accounting tools that help us to do things. And then we've got the bank rec in there as well, so you can manually kind of enter the bank rec on the date that you think it should be, compare it to what's in FreeAgent, and then it will take you through the various different differences. And you can also export that as well. So you can send it off to your client and say, what are these 6 unexplained transactions that are showing through there. So that's it. Just a quick look and feel. And before you all drop off, I've got one more poll to run. And then I'm going to, if you would like someone to get in touch with you for a one-to-one consultation, if you're a bookkeeper or an accountant in practice, give us a shout. We'll be able to help facilitate that. The guys in the account management team are incredibly helpful at being able to get you onboarded onto FreeAgent, and start to see the benefits of the platform, and they'll be able to give you a much more in-depth experience than we've looked at today, for your small and micro businesses that really benefit from being on the FreeAgent platform. And I'll leave that running for a little while because there's still we've still got well over 100 people on the call. So I just wanted to say final thank you to everybody again. So thank you to my panelists. They've all dropped off now, but just a final thanks again because they were brilliant and really high class panel today of experience within our industry. I want to say thank you to the comms team who put these webinars on. I'm just the guy that turns up and talks for an hour. There is a huge amount of work that goes into making sure that registrations are easy, you get the follow-ups, that we're able to put the right data in the right places and make sure that you get the person contacting you and giving you a call when you've said you'd like us to. And then obviously all the assets that we get, the slides, the images, the illustrations. And like to say thanks to Louise. I think she's dropped off now. She was manning the chat box. And then also just a big thank you to everybody that tuned in and gave up your time to listen today. I hope you got plenty from it. If you want to check any last comments in the chat box, will be hugely appreciated. I'll give everyone a few more seconds to finish off the poll, and then we'll call time only 5 minutes late, which is, I think, probably a record for me. So thanks everyone. Thanks everyone again. And I've really enjoyed today. Much appreciated. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Soren. Thanks, Jude. Thanks, John. Thanks, Caroline. Thanks, Elia. Thanks, Nathan. Thanks, Louise. Thanks, Bilal. Thanks, Gerard. Yeah, Russell's dropped a link to that post I was talking about on LinkedIn. So yeah, go have a look at that. It's really, really insightful. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Manzar. Thanks, Jan. Thanks, Telak. Brilliant. Right, I'm going to end the poll and call time on the webinar. Thanks again, everybody.